All right. And is everybody on board in good health otherwise?
Yeah, everybody's
How
on
many?
board.
All right. Do you need the United States Coast Guard?
What?
Do you need the United States Coast Guard?
No, we do not need that.
There are moments in an investigation that change everything. Not because someone confesses, not because police hold a press conference, and not because new witnesses suddenly appear. Sometimes, the biggest breakthrough is something that has been there all along, hidden in plain sight. For weeks, one recording sat untouched inside an official records request. Thousands of people heard it. News organizations played it. Investigators knew it existed, but almost no one was listening to what was happening behind the conversation. Then someone enhanced the background. What emerged wasn't another rumor. It wasn't another internet theory. It wasn't another anonymous tip. It was a voice, a name, and a question that has sent shockwaves through the investigation. Nolan. Moments later, is he dead? If those words are what they appear to be, they completely contradict what the caller was telling the dispatcher at that exact same moment. Because while someone in the background seemed to be desperately trying to help another person, the caller calmly insisted that everyone aboard the boat was perfectly fine. Two completely different stories. One single phone call. And only one of them can be true. Tonight we're breaking down the newly uncovered audio, the GPS evidence, the independent autopsy, and the unanswered questions that continue to haunt Nolan Wells' family. Because every new piece of verified information seems to point toward one unavoidable conclusion. Someone knows far more than they've admitted. If you're new here and you appreciate factual, evidence-based true crime coverage, consider subscribing. We follow every verified development from beginning to end, separating confirmed facts from speculation. Now, let's go back to the beginning of the update that has everyone talking. For Nolan Wells' family, every day since July 4th has been a search for answers. Not assumptions, not social media rumors. Answers. As investigators continued interviewing witnesses and reviewing digital evidence, another development quietly unfolded behind the scenes. NBC News obtained a maritime assistance recording through an official records request. At first, the call appeared routine. A group reported that their boat was taking on water near Horn Island.
All right. And is everybody on board in good health otherwise?
Yeah, everybody's
How
on
many?
board.
All right. Do you need the United States Coast Guard?
What?
Do you need the United States Coast Guard?
No, we do not need that.
Nothing about it immediately suggested that it would become one of the most discussed pieces of evidence in the case. But after the recording became public, people began listening more carefully. Not to the dispatcher, not to the caller, to the voices in the background. That changed everything. Before examining what those background sounds appear to capture, it's important to understand what this phone call actually was. This wasn't a 911 emergency call. It wasn't routed directly to law enforcement. Instead, it was placed to a private maritime assistance company that helps stranded boaters, much like roadside assistance for vehicles. The dispatcher's job was straightforward: determine the location, assess the situation, arrange help, nothing more. She had no reason to suspect she might be documenting one of the most controversial investigations on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. The caller explained that the boat's bilge pump had stopped working. Water was reportedly entering the vessel. According to him, the boat was sinking. The dispatcher immediately began asking routine safety questions. Where are you located? How much water is coming in? Do you need the Coast Guard? How many people are on board? Is everyone okay? The answers came quickly, almost too quickly. The caller repeatedly insisted everyone was fine. There was no indication, at least from his responses, that anyone aboard the vessel was experiencing a life-threatening emergency. He declined Coast Guard assistance. He focused on arranging a tow. The conversation continued. Nothing appeared unusual. At least, not until someone stopped listening to what was being said and started listening to what wasn't meant to be heard. Insert boat audio here. When audio engineers and independent listeners enhanced the recording, several background sounds became the focus of intense public discussion. One appeared to be someone calling out Nolan's name. Another sounded like a voice asking, "Is he dead?" A third appeared to direct someone named Wyatt to check another person's chest. Those interpretations have circulated widely since the recording became public. However, authorities have not officially confirmed or authenticated those specific background phrases. What is confirmed is that the recording exists. It was obtained through official channels, and it has become one of the most closely analyzed pieces of evidence in the entire investigation. That alone raises difficult questions. Because if Nolan truly wasn't on that boat, why does so much attention continue to surround what appears to be happening in the background? The contrast between the foreground conversation and the background sounds is what has drawn so much scrutiny. On one side of the recording, the dispatcher is calmly gathering information. The caller repeatedly assures her that everyone is okay. On the other, listeners believe they hear urgency, confusion, panic, even possible medical concern. Again, those interpretations remain unconfirmed by investigators. But the difference in tone has become impossible for many people following the case to ignore. While the recording fueled new questions, investigators were also examining another source of evidence that couldn't be influenced by memory or emotion: technology. Unlike eyewitness accounts, GPS data doesn't forget. It doesn't become confused. It doesn't change its story days later. Every movement is automatically recorded. Every timestamp remains exactly where it was created. And according to records later obtained during the investigation, the vessel's movements have raised nearly as many questions as the audio itself. The Garmin navigation system aboard the boat documented where it traveled throughout the afternoon. According to those records, between approximately 4:31 p.m. and 5:24 p.m., the vessel moved only a relatively short distance while traveling at unusually slow speeds. That detail immediately stood out, because during roughly the same period, the caller reported that the boat was rapidly taking on water. Common sense suggests that a vessel believed to be sinking would attempt to reach safety as quickly as possible. Instead, the recorded movement appeared slow and deliberate. Eventually, the boat accelerated dramatically before returning toward the dock. That shift in speed has become another point investigators continue reviewing alongside witness statements and other evidence. Insert GPS map animation here. Technology doesn't tell investigators why something happened. It only records what happened. Interpreting those movements requires investigators to compare GPS records with witness interviews, phone data, and physical evidence. That's where things become much more complicated, because several public statements made after July 4th have evolved over time. And every time new evidence becomes public, earlier explanations are viewed through a different lens. Among those interviewed was Warren Hudson, who described Nolan as one of his closest friends. According to his public statements, Nolan appeared normal throughout the day. Nothing suggested anything was wrong. Nothing appeared unusual. Then, according to Hudson, something happened that shifted his attention. He later explained that someone approached him and reported his younger brother had become involved in a fight elsewhere on the island. Hudson says he went to deal with that situation. If accurate, it would mean he was no longer watching Nolan during a critical period. That explanation has become an important part of the timeline because it attempts to explain why Hudson says he cannot account for Nolan's final known moments before the boat departed. Investigators will ultimately determine how that statement fits alongside every other piece of evidence. But while interviews continue, the GPS continued recording. It documented movements after the boat returned to shore. According to publicly discussed tracking information, the vessel later made additional trips before eventually being removed from the water. Those subsequent movements have generated ongoing public questions because not every stop has been fully explained in public statements. Again, investigators, not the public, will determine whether those movements have any investigative significance. But they remain part of the timeline, and timelines matter, especially in unexplained death investigations. As scrutiny surrounding the audio and GPS intensified, another major development emerged hundreds of miles away. An independent forensic examination was about to introduce another unanswered question, one that centered not on where Nolan was, but on how he died. That announcement would come from a nationally recognized forensic pathologist during a conference in Chicago, and what he revealed only deepened the mystery. Unlike television dramas, real forensic investigations rarely provide instant certainty. Sometimes they answer one question, only to create 5 more. That is exactly what happened when the independent autopsy findings were announced. Rather than offering a clear explanation, the report emphasized what still could not be determined. And for Nolan's family, those unanswered questions were becoming almost as painful as the loss itself. For most families, an autopsy is expected to answer the hardest question imaginable. How did their loved one die? For Nolan Wells' family, it did something very different. It left the biggest questions unanswered. As public attention focused on the mysterious boat audio and the GPS timeline, another major development unfolded hundreds of miles away at the National Association of Black Journalists convention in Chicago. Standing before reporters and supporters, attorney Ben Crump introduced the preliminary findings of an independent forensic examination conducted by Dr. Roger Mitchell, a nationally recognized forensic pathologist. Everyone expected clarity. Instead, the findings revealed just how much uncertainty still surrounded Nolan's death. According to the preliminary report, the independent examination could not determine Nolan's official cause of death, nor could it determine the manner of death. Even the exact date of death remained undetermined. Those aren't conclusions investigators hope to reach. They're indications that the available evidence simply doesn't answer the most basic forensic questions. For Nolan's mother, Christine Wansley, those findings were heartbreaking. Weeks had passed since her son disappeared. Yet the investigation still couldn't explain exactly how an 18-year-old who could swim ended up dead. Instead of providing closure, the report highlighted just how many questions remained unresolved. One observation in particular attracted immediate attention. Dr. Mitchell documented an area of red discoloration in the soft tissue at the back of Nolan's head. The report did not conclude that it caused his death. It did not classify it as a fatal injury, but its presence immediately raised new questions. When did it happen? How did it happen? And could it help investigators better understand Nolan's final moments? Those are questions only a complete forensic investigation can answer. For now, they remain part of the evidence, not proof of what occurred. The independent findings also underscored another challenge investigators face. By the time Nolan's body was recovered, decomposition had limited what forensic experts could conclusively determine. That doesn't mean investigators stopped searching for answers. It simply means physical evidence alone may never tell the complete story. Instead, detectives must piece together dozens of separate elements: witness interviews, digital evidence, GPS records, cell phone data, surveillance footage, forensic analysis. Every one of those pieces must fit together before investigators can confidently explain what happened. And according to authorities, that work is still ongoing. While those findings were being discussed publicly, another important detail quietly emerged. The Mississippi State Medical Examiner had already conducted its own autopsy weeks earlier. However, those findings had not yet been released to the public. Officials explained that toxicology testing remained pending, and under Mississippi procedure, reports involving non-natural deaths are typically presented to a grand jury before becoming public. That meant Nolan's family was still waiting. The public was still waiting, and every day without answers created more frustration. Meanwhile, investigators continued reviewing evidence collected from multiple agencies. The Jackson County Sheriff's Office confirmed that more than 60 witnesses had been interviewed. Federal authorities, including the FBI, were assisting with portions of the digital evidence review. That level of involvement demonstrates how seriously investigators are treating the case. But despite the number of interviews conducted, one question continued echoing across social media and news coverage. What exactly happened during those missing moments on July 4th? The audio recording became central to that discussion, not because it answers every question, but because it appears to introduce entirely new ones. Again, it's important to distinguish between confirmed facts and public interpretation. The recording itself is authentic. It was obtained through official records. What listeners believe they hear in the background remains the subject of ongoing public debate. Investigators have not publicly verified those interpretations, nor have they announced whether enhanced forensic audio analysis has confirmed or rejected them. That silence has only intensified public interest. Perhaps the most striking aspect of this investigation isn't any single piece of evidence. It's how each development seems connected to another. The audio raises questions. The GPS timeline raises questions. The autopsy raises questions. Witness statements raise questions. Individually, none of those elements tells the complete story. Together, they paint a picture of an investigation that is still unfolding. One where every verified update seems to reveal another missing piece rather than provide a final answer. Another issue drawing attention involves Nolan's cell phone. According to statements made by his family, concerns were raised regarding activity on the device after his body was recovered. Those concerns have become another area investigators may eventually examine, alongside other forms of digital evidence. Modern investigations increasingly rely on technology, messages, location history, photos, application data, device activity. Each digital footprint has the potential to either confirm or challenge witness accounts. Whether Nolan's phone ultimately provides meaningful answers remains unknown, but it could become one of the most significant pieces of evidence still awaiting full examination. As investigators continue reviewing evidence, another legal process has quietly moved forward. Christine Wansley filed paperwork asking the court to appoint her administrator of Nolan's estate. At first glance, that might sound like a routine legal filing. In reality, it reflects another painful reality faced by grieving families. Certain legal actions cannot move forward until the appropriate documentation is in place. For Christine, it wasn't simply paperwork. It was another reminder that even while mourning her son, she still had to navigate legal procedures no parent ever expects to face. Throughout this investigation, Nolan's family has consistently repeated the same message. They are not asking for speculation. They are asking for answers. They want every piece of evidence thoroughly examined, every witness interviewed, every timeline verified, and every inconsistency addressed. Their request has remained remarkably consistent from the beginning. Find the truth, whatever that truth may ultimately be. As investigators continue their work, public interest has shown no signs of slowing. Every newly released document, every interview, every court filing, every official statement, each one is carefully analyzed by people hoping another piece of the puzzle has finally appeared. That level of attention reflects more than curiosity. It reflects the extraordinary number of unanswered questions that still surround this case. The investigation has now reached a point where patience becomes just as important as persistence. Grand jury proceedings operate on their own timeline. Forensic testing cannot be rushed. Digital examinations often require weeks or even months. Investigators must ensure every conclusion can withstand legal scrutiny. That process may feel slow to the public, but accuracy matters far more than speed. Because once official conclusions are announced, they must be supported by evidence, not assumptions. Still, some questions remain impossible to ignore. If the boat was truly experiencing a life-threatening emergency, why do the GPS records appear inconsistent with that level of urgency? If everyone aboard was safe, why do so many listeners believe they hear panic in the background of the recording? If Nolan never boarded that vessel after arriving at Horn Island,
672.
All right, 4672. All right, and you were breaking up a little bit. Can you just repeat it one more time to make sure I have it correct?
why has the audio become such an important focus of discussion? And perhaps the biggest question of all, what happened during the moments no one has yet been able to fully explain? Those questions remain unanswered today. Only investigators examining all available evidence can determine whether those questions eventually receive definitive answers. As this investigation continues, one thing is certain. The search for answers has never been about internet theories. It's about evidence, verified timelines, forensic science, witness testimony, digital records, and allowing investigators to determine where those facts ultimately lead. For Nolan's family, every day without certainty is another difficult day, but they continue asking the same question they have asked from the beginning. What happened to Nolan Wells? Until that question is answered through evidence, this case remains one of the most closely watched investigations in the country. If you followed this case from the beginning, let us know your thoughts in the comments. Which verified piece of evidence do you believe investigators still need to explain more clearly? The audio recording, the GPS timeline, or the forensic findings? If you appreciate factual, carefully researched true crime documentaries, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. We follow every confirmed development and separate verified evidence from speculation, so you always know what's been officially established. As new information becomes available, we'll continue covering this case with accuracy, balance, and respect for everyone involved. Until then, thank you for watching. Justice for Nolan Wells.